Are we good to go?
Yes.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. It's afternoon here in the UK, wherever you are around the world. Welcome, and welcome to this session on an introduction to the forces of destruction and other business derailing activities. It's a condition or a force that was identified by Deming and originally published in his 1994 book, The New Economics. And what we will see and go through today is that the occurrence of these things are not getting less, but are becoming more invasive. It's really a story about a huge mismatch between people and what makes us human, and the activities of organizations that are increasingly out of step with the climate, the environment, and above all, people's lives. So just wanted to start with some basics. As people, we're social beings. We're most comfortable in groups, clans, tribes, etc., which importantly share common beliefs and objectives. And it's these relationships that give us identity, belonging, and above all, purpose, and the purpose in our lives, which drives the things that we do. And as people, we're intricate, but we all have basic needs. We're at our best when we believe in the purpose, when we're trusted, and are in a psychological and psychosocial safe place. And I'll be returning to that and the elements of teams and team building a little later in the talk. Importantly, as people, we play, work, and socialize all at the same time. Unfortunately, managers don't often see that. They think that if you're in a work environment, you should be working. But as people, we don't. We do all three things all of the time. And people are genuinely at their best when there is trust and when they communicate with other people. So what's the issue? Some traits. Have you ever really looked at just how babies explore their new world? Nothing's out of bounds for them. They're very inquisitive and they gain knowledge as they explore. But throughout our lives, we're subject to multiple rules and pressures, and they rob us of that innate quality that we were born with. Basically starts with star ratings in primary school, around 5 years old, and it continues through the rest of one's education. You see, children are natural system thinkers, but unfortunately, the educational practices we put them through teaches them things, or thinks it does, by rote. And that eradicates their ability to think systemically. Practice, as I say, starts around primary school and continues right through senior tertiary education. Later in organizations, we tend to migrate into one of two camps. Either in some form of authority, applying rules, or in positions of being subject to those rules. Either way, we become prisoners of a system that robs us of self-esteem. And I'm going to return to self-esteem later in team building, but the problem is that no organization can do things without people. And we're now living in a high VUCA world, and you can't escape it. VUCA stands for high levels of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And unless you engage with people meaningfully, you share a common purpose and community, you'll struggle. But what we see are organizations still doing lots of the following. we're really talking about people and what drives them, what excites them, and what they don't like. So here are some of the environments that we pass through on our way journey in life. And surprisingly, it doesn't take much to disenfranchise somebody. Re-engaging them is very difficult. So how do these forces of destruction arise? Basically, they arise from external meddling. We're all victims of this system, which, as roles are played out, gains momentum. Our collective environments, school, work, clubs, are systems with subsystems that are intricately connected. And it's not the obvious connections, i.e. a hierarchy diagram of the organization, that shows these links. Leadership is the art of recognizing this and managing the white spaces, the gaps between job positions and functions. Many organizations talk about benchmarking, copying, when these processes are fundamentally flawed. A one-size approach does not fit all, as no two systems or subsystems or people, for that matter, are alike or operate in the same way. Before we look at the forces of destruction, we need to try and understand motivation. First thing to remember is people are basically intrinsically motivated. And that's a fundamental point to note, and we should not forget it. But many organizations use extrinsic motivational models. When you use a reward system, it becomes the only mechanism you have. People become used to the reward and view it increasingly as a standard part of the salary. They stop being innovative. You therefore have to keep increasing the reward for it to have a renewed effect. But alas, again, it's only a temporary fix. As we'll see, it's the application of extrinsic motivational factors, and by inference, the suppression of intrinsic motivational factors that suppress innovation and enthusiasm for the job. Even if you're the manager, staff get harder and harder to motivate, both extrinsically, and it becomes nigh on impossible to restore intrinsic motivation. So let's have a look at Deming's original work. This is, as I say, from the New Economics. In my copy, it's page 122. And this stuff's about 30 years old now. Since Deming first put this together. Reiterating where we were with children, one's born with a lot of intrinsic motivation, self-esteem, dignity, curiosity, cooperation, and a joy in learning. We want to keep finding things out. They're high at the beginning of life, but are gradually crushed by the forces of destruction. So here are the forces that Deming originally put together. Forced distribution of grades in schools, gold stars, merit systems, judging people, putting them into slots, competition between people, groups, everything, people fighting amongst one another for resources in organizations. Incentive pay for performance. It doesn't really work. People are intrinsically motivated. Numerical goals without a method. We need 10% more today for whatever reason. Explanation of variances without understanding variation. We tend to look at numbers in tabular format and spend hours in board meetings debating why this week's numbers are higher or lower than last week's, without understanding what the trend or the variation, the natural variation is. And sub-optimization, we make every group and every division a profit center, when in likelihood, it's better that the whole business is a profit center and some sections of it are suboptimal to make the whole more optimal. These, as Deming wrote, these forces cause humiliation, fear, self-defense. We'll look at some examples of that. They crush joy in learning, innovation, and they gradually replace intrinsic motivation, self-esteem, and dignity. More latterly, we've seen an even bigger force of destruction, and that's toxic workplaces. And I'll focus on that as we finish this first section. We should remember that although this was written over 30 years ago, it's still the most common form of management, belief, and control, even though the political landscape, the financial landscape, and the educational landscape have changed dramatically. So let's start with forced distribution of grades in schools. Favoured students get top grades. They always seem to do. Some children will be never good at mathematics. Hey, but you know, lots of people's brains are just wired differently. Some people are good at dancing. Some people are good at storytelling. Some people are good at acting. We should recognise that and bring out the best in people and not reinforce someone's hatred of, say, maths, which will be with them for the rest of their lives. Merits and classification. Here we go. Judge people and create competition between everything. Favoured sales staff get bonus for pseudo performance. There's a lot of notes about that in the TNE, putting one division against another, different territories of US companies selling around the world at different prices, when that company didn't even know what it cost to make the items in the first place. Always, quality suffers at the expense of quantity. There's some good examples of this in Wheeler's Making Sense of Data, chapter 12, if you want to pick it up. And I'll talk a little about the Pygmalion effect. One of the things you hear from managers is, if we set a target, people will stretch and grow into that target. That's a Pygmalion effect, and I'll talk about that next. But the outcome is sales get held back to the end of the month to boost figures. Therefore, we take a prize. Lumpy input to the organization causes systems in that organization to falter. And some people, salespeople, make up orders to get bonuses. Later, to the high expense of the organization, you can find that our order never existed. We're looking here at management by results. But if you look at Deming's red beads experiment based on performance, it highlights that achievements are usually only the result of lucky variation. Targets will be met by hook or by crook. Bonuses will be paid. But that may destroy the business in the process. We need to be working on improvement processes. Yes, we should remember that some objectives are factors of life, that if we don't look after the business properly, we may not exist in the future, but we shouldn't be putting money as the be-all and end-all for the organization. A little bit on the Pygmalion effect. This really came about from the psychologists Rothenthal and Jacobson. And it really comes from the Greek myth of Pygmalion, about a sculptor who fell so much in love with a perfectly beautiful sculpture he created that the statue came to life. But there are two parts of this. Does it really happen? The first one is the need to relate to the factors of motivatable people. It's not all situations guaranteed. If it's motivational, both from teacher, leader aspect, and the pupil employee is aligned with that motivation, then it will support the effect. However, if the situation is authoritative or bullying, and the individual or team do not see the purpose, then the situation is demotivating and the people disengage. Re-engaging them is difficult. Numerical goals without a method. So the board demands 12% increases in profits. Based on what? To pay a dividend? The problem with goals and targets are they're mainly based on historical outcomes, and that has flaws. So the outcome, sales drive, even if it means making up numbers, cut internal costs wherever, even if it damages the business. And departments compete against each other for diminishing resources. We should remember a target is not a measurement. Targets are arbitrary, generally meaningless. They become a pseudo point of action. Damage and learning is improved. It damages learning and improvement. So demands for a report on every number, blame somebody or something else, no detailed investigation, actual causes of the problem remain hidden, and no understanding of what the problem was. Whatever you do, don't put your hand up to say that you can solve the problem. If you fail, then that's even more problematic. We should understand here that a low understanding of natural variation drives in waste to the business. Here we are, sub-optimization. Departments compete for the same scarce resource. It's a bit like the way the Olympics are funded. You get gold, you get more money. The question you have to ask is how much seed money is needed to build a fledgling team? And you see it all the time, rugby, cycling, gymnastics. You didn't do very well in this year's Olympics. The medal haul wasn't good, so there's less funding, even though it can take years for an athlete to fully develop. Problem is, with all these forces of destruction, there's an over-focus on money and control, even in the face of declining business performance. The result is that the overall company still trades as a hostage to fortune. The hostage is, did we make a profit? The fortune is what's going on in the market, because you're not controlling your own destiny. Toxic workplaces. Our workplaces are fast becoming dangerous places to be. And it's really about the invasive and insidious damage done to intrinsically motivated people by highly regimented workplaces that may be pursuing agendas and management practices that denigrate people and their joy in life. There's a lot of talk about so-called Generation Z are refusing to put up with these environments. Well, you think back to when you were younger. We used to think that the people running the organization didn't quite know what they were doing, or that other things needed to change. It's no different with the younger people today. But the political landscape's changed. The financial landscape has changed. They've seen their parents in hoc to organizations for a long time. And what are they left with at retirement? Not a great deal. And they're quite determined not to go there. There's nothing wrong with Gen Z. They just see the world differently. And many organizations are moribund with bureaucracy and box ticking, which is the antithesis of learning and growth. Yet being seen to have done your job, filled in the form, ticked the box, becomes more important than trying to fix something. And if you look at the risk analysis on not doing something, it's better to keep quiet in a meeting than put your hand up. We should also remember here that in a bureaucracy, procedure is more important than outcome. For improvement, learning and growth, outcome is more important than how you got there. The two are diametrically opposite. And our political systems seem to be heading more into bureaucracy than in growth. So some examples. Management by searchlight. Oh, the finger's pointed at you. It's definitely painful. You keep your head down if you can. Bullying environments. We all seen many of those. Pseudo targets. Management by results. Management by objectives. Intel management by objectives. And objectives and key results, which is another Intel thing. Directed to complete urgent but fruitless tasks. And I love this one. Accused of not being loyal, whatever it means. It's a drive within the organization that you need to behave the same way as others, or you're not one of us. It's a good way of actually disenfranchising people. Some core problems. Managers are in charge and operate as though theirs is the only way. Having taught on MBA courses, you can see that the pupils there are shown around many organizations. They're shown, this is how you do the job. This is how you control people. This is how you manage a business in today's world. So they get trained and treated in a different way to other people. But I think there's a fundamental problem that the skills you gain in order to climb the greasy pole are the wrong skills that you end up needing to be able to manage the organization. Yet we know that managers do not have all the day-to-day information of customer-facing staff have, but they still make the decisions. They operate as though they do not trust people. Divide and conquer does that, just conquers the initiative. Command and control stamps out the innovation. People are managed as though they are doing menial tasks. The issue here is that today's workforces are not the same as they were 100 years ago. Common management practices are still based on practices from the beginning of the Industrial Revolution and mass manufacturing in the mid-20th century. The issue is that the workforces were not highly educated, and within society there were lower expectational values. So a command and control or experienced practitioner management approach worked. But today, our workforces are better educated, have greater spending potential, and have greater self-fulfillment aspirations. They react to being pushed around if they feel that their role is futile or not socially well-serving. So what drives this behaviour? It's a shift in power, but not responsibility, from those who make the organisation work to those who are simply career-orientated. You should remember, no true leader would put themselves before their people. Leadership is not about rising through the ranks, but about helping those around you rise. And bad leaders care about who is right, but good leaders care about what's right. That's from Simon Sinek. But there are many issues, and 2 points stand out. The mantra is, never admit you made a mistake. We see that's rife in our political systems. This is just the Bonaparte complex. Napoleon said, never admit a mistake. Never retreat, never react, never admit a mistake. The mistake's valuable. If you do 4 things with it, you recognize it, you admit it, you learn from it, and then the business learns from it. Shifting power on these practices are toxic, expensive, and disruptive. I can talk to you about some organizations that have descended into managing queues, not even user outcomes. And again, it's bureaucratic because procedure and protocol are more important than outcome. For growth and learning, it's the outcome that's more important. So the whole shift in power and focus from purpose to self for the few who are not at the user interface is destructive to users, employers, the organization, and ultimately the country. The demoralizing and social destroying effects of a toxic workplace environment permeate through the office walls into the home lives of everyone. It doesn't stay in the office. It actually escapes and gets out there. You see it in the way society behaves when in close proximity to others. It's becoming more aggressive, less tolerant. And teams in organizations start to focus on from purpose to themselves in self-defense. I came across a team recently where at the end of a session, they made sure that every member of the team signed all the official documents. The reason was not that the people in the everybody in the team had seen what's going on, but it was a defense mechanism. Management can't fire the whole team. They don't have an operation if they do. And I find that pretty sad. So here's some of the wider effects. You might try to tell yourselves that it's stress. It isn't, guys. It's really not part of the job. And this ends up as lower productivity, poor customer reactions, higher operating costs, lower quality of service, and in the end, lower revenues. And organizations become renowned for these practices, and it becomes difficult to recruit. We need to remember that we're operating in a high VUCA world. And it simply begs the question, why would you not want to harness all the talents of your people in growing the organization? Remember, it's not just the employees who can't survive. The company can't either. These things are now really affecting society as a whole. But all's not lost. How can we survive? Whilst operating the organization as a matter for the organization itself, it's interesting to note that the common trait in Western management is about hierarchies and who is in charge. This generally results in poorer outcomes. Yet in the Far East, management is about everyone is driving their own element, so they have control and autonomy. That results in growth outcomes. We see organizations do not really have good purpose statements. They don't understand what their true north is. As a result, they can't apply constancy of purpose. Remember, managerialism is the antithesis of understanding. If the focus is on money, the decisions at all levels will be about money, to the detriment of the customers and employees. But if the focus is on customer and quality, then decisions at all levels will drive higher quality of service and ultimately profitability. And counterintuitively, Higher quality lowers the internal cost of doing business by removing waste. Well, there's many examples about this out there. We don't need to look at them. There are many cases and inquiries being reported by our press at the moment. But outside this country, we can see a lot of press about Boeing having a crisis of quality, bits of planes falling off in mid-flight. I don't think it's got a crisis of quality. I think it's got a crisis of purpose, as lots of other organisers do. They've forgotten what they're there for. They've focused on the wrong things, which consume more and more time, money and resources just to keep covering them up. I'd like to give you an example from history of Collis P. Huntington. Some of you may know, but he was a US entrepreneur who built the Chesapeake and Ohio Railway, and it terminated at a place called Hampton Roads, where they built a dry dock. Later, it became known as Newport News, Dry Dock Company. It is actually not a newspaper, it's a shipbuilding organisation. And if you look that place up today, it's the Atlantic main base for the American Navy and submarine fleet, and it's also its largest shipbuilding yard. But he said on building this dock, we will build good ships at a profit if we can, at a loss if we must, but always good ships. If you think about that as a purpose statement, what he's saying is, yes, we need to make money. We've got to survive, but we're going to put the customer first and we're going to put quality first. The result is that everybody in the organization thinks about the work they're doing, the quality and the customer. And that's what drove the success. Remember, self-protection damages everybody and costs the organization and ultimately the country dearly. But people, if you trust your people, people will apply lots of ingenious methods to the benefits of the business. If they're trusted to do so, they will trust you. On failure, I can think of a number of companies where they have failure wall Fridays. Look at where we messed up. Learning for all. They get excited about talking to the rest of the business about where they messed up. Other people in the organization may have solution ideas. It costs the company money to make that mistake. Why would you want to make it again? So these companies work hard at exposing mistakes so that they can learn from them. And remember, if you've so disenfranchised your people that they don't love your business, how can you expect your customers to do it? Some core foundations. For a psychosocial and psychologically safe environment, the most important elements of a fearless team. But it's the team that establishes this. So, cornerstone, establish your purpose. You cannot move forward if you don't have a good purpose and an understanding of what your true north is, because that guides everything you and your organization does. The main foundation, trust. Trust your people who feel capable to take calculated risks. They'll grow the business for you. Establish an open learning environment. When people are encouraged to learn, they explore positive options. If people want to go on a training course, let's say they want to go on a course of underwater basket weaving, that's fine, let them go. It's about them growing. Their growth is your growth. And celebrate and learn from failure. Failures cost a lot of time and money. Get everybody to learn from them. You certainly don't want to repeat them. The organisation's purpose is everybody's system. And here are the primary elements of a high-performing team. Number one, psychological safety. Can we take risks in this team without feeling insecure or embarrassed? Dependability. Can we count on each other to do high-quality work on time? Structure and clarity. Are the goals, roles, and execution plan for our team clear? Are we working on something that's personally important to us? And the impact. Do we fundamentally believe that the work we are doing matters? This really came out of findings by Julia Rodsky and other results of the Google's Aristotle team. You'll find that psychological safety being talked about for a long time. A good book to pick up is Amy Edmondson's book, The Fearless Organization, which goes into a history of it. But the companies that have actually realized that the fundamental element is psychological safety are moving forward at a great rate. And finally, a parting shot or two. At the start of this session, slide 3, I spoke about people ending up in one of two camps, those applying the rules and those controlled by the rules. But have hope. There's a growing cohort of organisation and influential individuals who both know and talk about a better way. Lastingly, remember, change is coming. The political and environmental landscape is changing quite dramatically, whether those applying the rules like it or not. So thank you. I'll be open to any questions and discussion we'd like to talk about. If somebody can change the system for me, please. Well,
if I might just make a comment at the moment, Kevin.
yeah.
I was reading up something in the last few days, reminding myself of an old Tom Peters video called The Leadership Alliance. And it's interesting that that's one of the 4 leaders and the 4 firms that he referred to was a firm called Johnsonville Foods. This was in the 1980s. And even back in the 1980s, Johnsonville Foods was working with self-managing teams. And it's grown to be the biggest manufacturer of sausages and bratwurst in the United States. I don't think that's a coincidence that the firm has a different ethos, had a different ethos, and I think it still has it since it's privately owned and not trying to meet stock market numbers or something like that.
Yes, it's quite interesting that if you are constantly trying to chase the stock market, then that's what you'll continue to do. Just chase the money. And that's, I think, what you see in Boeing. They became very fixated with the stock market price, even moving the head office away from Seattle.
Yeah.
Yes, with the excuse at the time that if you were actually at Seattle, you get caught up in the day-to-day, which begs the question, come on, guys, what are you there for?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then following on from Johnsonville Foods is, of course, the famous Brazilian case of Ricardo Semler. Talked about in his book Maverick, the Semco engineering company, but again, use self-managing teams. But more recently, I've seen examples of IT related and software related companies, the Happy Company in London and Maiden in Bath, who run self-managing teams for better results.
Right. I'm just looking at the chat. In the absence of Chanel and Rimmel, I've managed to find the chat, guys. Aha, right. What we've got here is Ben Chan. Just a question in terms of practicality. For example, are there any, let's bring this on this, oops, what have I just done? Sorry, guys, just bear with me. Oh, right. Can somebody get the chat up? I can't. I get the screens. They CQ, I've taken the screen away from me.
Okay. Do you want me to read it out to you?
Yeah, we need to read it out. It's Ben Chan's right at the bottom.
Yeah.
And then we need to chat to Ben. Hi, Ben. Nice to see you online. Can you take your... Hi. Have you got your mic off? Excellent.
Yes, yeah.
Ben, nice to see you.
Yes, nice to see you too. It was very good. It's basically just a question about, you know, from a practicality point of view, you know, if we are say in a from an employee point of view, because what I've realized, what you've mentioned about a lot from say the MBA courses, the culture, really that's a lot of you know, it's sort of like the heart of the issue, or should we say. So I just wondering if there's any tips you could share with us about, you know, any changes or improvements that we could be from a different perspective, say from say an employee lower down in the hierarchy to say middle managers to say, you know, directors.
Right. One of the views we've taken is that a number of senior people in organizations are simply a lost cause. They've been at this for so long, doing it in particular ways that it becomes very difficult for them to do anything else. Where we see the growth is with people like yourself in sections of the organization applying the rules in a different way and building up your own bits and pieces. There's a very interesting book that we've just got from one of our colleagues called Managed by Morons. Oh, it's gone out of focus. There we go. Managed by Morons. Yeah. Sorry. Let's get this in focus. Well, there we go. Can you see that? James Lowther.
Yes, yeah.
And it's I think you can get it from Google. But again, he goes into, it's quite interesting because he spends a lot of time talking about how he struggled against an overt management and what he had to do in order to motivate his department while still operating under this umbrella of a rather more difficult regime. So he was working very hard at that. And the essence was, yes, you can do it. You just have to have faith and keep going with your own people and your own team and make a difference. What's important is that in there is you personally. You may not be in that company for the rest of your life. So it's how do you safeguard your psychological safety and how do you look after yourself as well as your team. And those are all practices and traits and attributes that will help you very much as you grow in your career.
That's great. Thank you, Kevin.
That's okay, no problem. Right. Nobody else, there's nothing else on chat. No. Have we had any more messages? Q&A? Oh, somebody's come up in Q&A.
Can I read question to you?
Yes, please
Kevin?
do, yes.
Right. There's another one here from Jen, is having worked in various companies over the last few years due to COVID. It is interesting to see that quality is not come easy. Quality professionals must always qualify. Must always qualify what's in it for me, to both management and everyone in the company. This is from Jen.
Yes. Yes.
Right. Any point to add about that, Kevin?
I think, first of all, from my perspective, the question, what's in it for me, begs a short-term thinking. It's, why should I do this if I can't immediately see the benefit? A lot of the benefits of these things come after a period of time. And it's important that you have to work on some small wins in order to show how working on these structures within the organization will reap benefit. But it is a difficult problem because these managers have been steeped in one way of working and learning for so long, it's very difficult for them to see a different way. And to me, they learn better from examples, i.e. you can show the wins in your own department, than they do by being told about it. We have to remember that these people also communicate in a different way. They communicate with other people in other organizations at the same level, and people within the organization tend to communicate tangentially to that with customers and other people in organizations. So it's all very difficult in that sense. So you have to find approaches which enable you to engage by example rather than just talking about it.
Kevin, there's a question from Christopher. Can I read it to you?
Yes, we've got one in chat as well, which we mustn't forget.
Right, that's in chat. I mean in chat, in Christopher questions. Can I read to you?
Yeah.
Right.
I'll
He
get that
says,
first.
right, in this business environment where people believe in practices like performance appraisal, individual performance means, how can individuals challenge this? What can we do differently?
Oh, golly. Again, we must understand that the managers are steeped in this learning. And again, I come back to it being by example. You have to build a team which shows that the alternative methods build more harmonious operations within the organization. It's very difficult for a manager when all their training and all their experience with other organizations is you do these things to people in order to keep them under control.
Thank you, Kevin.
I'm
There's
just-
there's one question in chat. Can I read it to you also?
Yes, please. We need to
Right.
us to get Ira.
Right. This is from Ira. He just like asking, why do we think that companies and organizations still operate in a way that is so historically brutal? What can be done to show the path of people are the key to quality and success?
I think they still believe in the way they operate because of their training and climbing the greasy pole. If you're going to climb the greasy pole to more senior management, you have to behave in a particular way. You have to learn certain skills. And as I say, the problem is once you get to the top of the greasy pole, unfortunately, the skills you've learned are completely the wrong set to be able to lead and manage a performance team. Also in organizations, it's the way these people are taught and they see it operating in the outside world. If your organization is listed, then the focus for the management and their pay remuneration package will also be bound to the share price. So they are bound to do things which drives the share price. They're not going to be inclined to listen to things that won't actually fulfill their remuneration package. We have to break that link. In some ways, that means that the way our organizations are funded at the moment is not necessarily a way that organizations can continue to be funded. I don't know what that will be, but I think there are going to have to be different funding models because shareholder primacy, which is effectively what this is doing serious damage to organizations and businesses. There are a lot of organizations around, and we can think of a few around here, where they just do not operate that way. They're focused very much on teams, and they are focused very much on everybody having direct access to the MD. But again, those organizations are fewer in number, but those organizations are also not directly linked into the stock exchange. They're funded in different ways. And as a result, they can run with these practices and can run with the way they treat people. I can think also of a company, basically they package fruit, that's all they do. But again, it's privately funded. And as a result, they were more concerned about their employees than they were about chasing the financial models. Again, that enabled them to become one of the best in the country, in fact, the top fruit packer in the country, and to grow. But they did, it wasn't difficult for them, but they did put lots of programs in place to listen to employees and to take their interests and their comments at heart. Let me give you an example. When the guy I know went into the company, there's usually in the food industry a 10 o'clock meeting in the morning. And the first question that gets asked, apart from did the startup this morning go well, was what happened yesterday. It took him months and months to get the team to stop hurling brickbats at one another, to the point that we'll settle on one thing that went wrong and we'll fix it, but we'll fix it as a team. And only through that perseverance did they eventually build a team culture right through the organization. He was prepared to listen and not give solutions, and allowed the team to eventually understand that they could contribute and that they were the masters of the solutions. So yes, it does take courage, but it also takes the right person to come along and help with that.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right.
There is another two more questions. I'm
Yes.
reading. This is another question from Ben. I'm reading the question. Another question, if I may ask, is that quality is quite frequently associated with accountability and subsequently blame and avoidance of accountability. Can you suggest any strategies or ways where we can develop a more open culture so people are more accepting to admitting their own mistakes? Is it quite important that managers set the scene for the delegates or an example of the change of culture? And could there be something more done by the top management?
Yes, I think with this, and this is from Amy Edmondson, you get yourself here into something known as the voice silence matrix. And the question you ask is it right to speak up in a meeting, or is it better to remain silent? Question you've asked yourself is who benefits for each of those? When does the benefit occur? And what's the certainty of the benefit? So if you speak up, who benefits? It's basically the organization and its customers. Question is, when does the benefit occur? It will be after some delay, firstly. And what's the certainty of the benefit to you? The answer is it's low, because somebody may hijack the idea if it's good. If we look at the silence side, who benefits? You do, because you're fine. When does the benefit occur? It occurs immediately, because nobody challenges you. And what's the certainty of the benefit? Well, it's high. So if the organization's slightly toxic, then the best outcome for people, because you benefit immediately and the success rate is high, is to keep quiet. But the problem is that doesn't help the organization. So going back to the foundational pieces I had, you have to start off with what is the purpose of the organization, and then you have to apply trust. For some organizations, that's going to be hard, but it's where you've got to start. And the purpose of an organization is not the flimsy bit of paper that's hung up on the office wall. That's usually something just to placate people. You've got to seriously think about it. And if you want some good examples, pick up the Toyota purpose statement. You'll find it online, or pick up the one from Collis P. Huntington and look at those and look at the elements of them. Okay.
Thank you, Kevin. There is one more question I'm going to read, but before that, I like to ask Jim or other Terry or other colleagues to see if I missed any other questions or just everything is down. This last question is here. Do we have any resources on fostering a good quality culture? Or can you recommend some resources? This is from Jen.
Sorry, guys, I'm thinking about that. Do we have a STEM SIG? Well, we have some interesting bits from Chris and the interviews Chris has done, particularly with, if I recall, one of them was Jackie in Australia. Chris, if he jumps in, if you can remember her surname. And there's a few more, but they're certainly they should be in the Knowledge Learning Hub on the CQI website, if they've been put there. Jackie Graham, thank you, Chris. Yes, to look up the interview between Chris Chinapoo and Dr. Jackie Graham, which should be on the hub, and also Chris Chinapoo and Dr. Bill Bellows. And there is another one. If I just quickly look into my diary here. There's Bill Strong and oh yes, there's a really good one with Tim Higgins. Again, Chris Chinapoo interviewing Tim Higgins, and that should be on the Knowledge Hub as well.
Thanks, Kevin.
Right.
One thing from my side, Kevin, well, I love the part you started by people are at their best when they are trusted and feel psychologically safe. And then when there is no trust, when there is no peace in the team, and team focus moves from purpose to self-defense because they are feeling not psychologically safe, so they want to defend themselves, and then they don't feel belonging, and they don't feel to think and work about purpose, and it brings the performance down. It means that, for example, if there are 10 people working in a team, performance is down, their belonging is 50% or 60%. It means that instead of 10 people, we have only 6 people are working for a team. So of course it's like that. And the one of your slides was core foundations. I liked it. The cornerstone are establishing our purpose, and main foundations are trusting our people. And then third was establishing open learning and celebrating and learning from failures, because it is costly. Company paid for
Yes.
that, and we don't want to pay again for that. It was wonderful.
Yes, I think those are really quite important. That and I'm just putting that up again.
Slide, this is slide 25.
Yes, that's
record.
where I am. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And if the importance, I can't overemphasize the importance of having a good purpose. It's basically the true north of the organization, and it has to be simple for everybody to understand and remember. That way they becomes inculcated into the culture and direction of the organization, and it ensures that it is everybody is aligned and working in the same direction.
And it should come from managers, right?
Yes.
It should come from leaders, and then they should be repeated and repeated, well, annually or in some frequency. Then the newcomers, they understand what they are doing, or people, they change a little bit from the direction. They come back to the direction. What is the purpose?
Absolutely. It's a bit like I said, if you focus on money, then everybody in the organization will focus on money. If you focus on
right.
quality, everybody will focus on quality. So it's about the way the organization's driven. That's absolutely correct, Rasul. And you have to have everybody aligned with the purpose. It also just makes managing or leading the organization that much simpler, because everybody's heading in the same direction.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin.
Right. Do we have any more? No, Jim's direct links to YouTube. Thank you very much, Jim. And Chris has put them over. Yes. Yep. Yep. Okay. We've dealt with the one Q&A. Okay. Well, we've hit 1:05. Does anybody still online have any further questions? Or want to add anything?
Can I add something?
Yes, please do.
One of the one of the options which Deming used back in 1950 in Japan was, instead of using the command and control top-down tree of power, he used the flow diagram, which focused on the customer.
Yes.
If instead of having the conventional organization chart, the organogram, if the organization represents itself as the flow diagram, then they are in a position that everybody has the same focus.
Well, that's exactly right, Alan. And the element of that is that it's your purpose statement.
Yeah.
And again, if you go back to the one by Collis P. Huntington, or you go back to Toyotas, or you go back to others from the East, they're all focused on quality and customer. So unless your purpose statement's right, then it's very difficult to get the organization to think, i.e. linearly as per that diagram, and accept the feedback loops if you don't have your purpose statement set properly.
Yeah. I was just suggesting that as absolutely the purpose statement is essential, and the flow diagram helps to facilitate that.
Well, it does, but there's also really good important elements in there, which is feedback.
Yeah.
And what we find from a lot of and feedback has to be constructive, but what we're finding from a lot of organizations is they don't want the feedback. The customer is there to, well, almost do as they're told. And unfortunately, many of them are finding that isn't working anymore, and quite rightly.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, for anybody who's still online, because I can't see everybody the way this is set up, I hope that was enjoyable. If you've any comments, please send them into the DEMSIG team, good or bad, or anything you think we could improve. And I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you. This
Thank
will,
you
of
very
course,
much.
appear online in the Learning Hub at some point.
Thank you, Kevin. It was
Thank you.
wonderful. It was great. Thank you very much. We
Thank you,
had
Russell.
21 people joining, and it was quite good discussion. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Kevin.
Okay.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank
Thanks,
you,
Kevin.
everybody.